In 1966, the Chicago Bears drafted the son of a Pennsylvania coal miner in the 4th round. Doug Buffone would go on to play 15 seasons for the Bears and later be named one of the 100 greatest Bears of all time. His allegiance to the Bears never waned, even when he took to the microphone and witnessed some horrendous Bears teams.
The fact is, there's not the fear put into them, because this game is a lot about fear. You either do the job, or you go home and go sell hamburgers at McDonald's.
Doug told it like it is, and that's part of the reason his nephew John has dedicated this show to Doug. And now John Buffone is spreading Buffone-branded beratements just like his uncle.
Win the football game. You're the head coach. I don't care what you have your fingers in. I don't care what you're meddling in. You're the head freaking coach. We get it. You're the most important guy on the staff. You don't have to keep trying to legitimize that.
And he's got pep talks too.
I love this team. And I know everyone watching and listening loves this team. So while we may be pessimistic and cynical, every one of us still has hope that the stars will align at some point. And if that ever does happen, you'll be glad you stuck around.
John is telling it like it is here on Buffone 55. And joining John are Alyssa Barbieri, managing editor of USA Today's NFL Wires, including Bears Wire, and also Danny Shimon, lead game and draft analyst for the Barroom Network. Buckle up and bear down. This is Buffone 55, The John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down those Chicago Bears. I'm John Buffone, and Alyssa Barbieri is currently churning out content on Bears Wire, so she has the night off. So we dusted off that old battle axe, Aldo Gandia, who used to do this for this show. And we've also brought in Danny Shimon. We're doing things a little bit different. We were going to talk about that 12-game losing streak, but as they say in the news business, Aldo, something else kind of buried the lead. A couple things buried the lead today in Halas Hall.
What a day. One day that we won't soon forget. So we're changing the format a little bit to address some of the major stories that came out of Halas Hall. There was more than one. And we usually do Buffone's basement with Danny Shimon in the last 45 minutes, but we decided to first address the news that Alan Williams has resigned as defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. He released a statement earlier today. I'm going to read that for everyone. Let me put it up on the screen. It is with great regret that I tender my resignation as the defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears Football Club, effective immediately. I am taking a step back to take care of my health and my family. I appreciate the opportunity to work with the Chicago Bears, a storied NFL franchise with a rich history. The McCaskey family is first class and second to none. I would also like to thank Coach Matt Eberflus and General Manager Ryan Poles for giving me the opportunity to come to Chicago. I would also like to thank President Kevin Warren, the coaches and players of which I value the relationships and camaraderie. I value the NFL Shield and all that it stands for, and after taking some time to address my health, I plan to come back and coach again. Sincerely, Coach Alan Williams. So that's the big story. There was all sorts of rumors that permeated. We're not going to address those rumors because there's just no need to. They're rumors. If nothing's been substantiated, John has made it clear as the managing editor of this show, his show, that we're not to talk about that, and we certainly won't. So, John, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so first and foremost, let it be clear, I'm not here to talk about rumors, hearsay, or anything that has not been properly sourced or verified, and I hope we all stay within those confines tonight. I'm sure the media and fans will be following this very closely, and as more facts come out, those conversations can be had. However, the only thing I do know for certain is that the Bears are without a defensive coordinator. That being said, it was a bizarre day at Halas Hall. Justin Fields' comments were a lightning rod across the country. Braxton Jones got put on IR. And for those that just can't get enough Bears news, Nate Peterman was released today, which of course led people talking about Tyson Bagent. So let's just go through these things systematically. Danny, let's start with you. What was your overall feeling of what was happening at Halas Hall today?
It was just one, big tweet after another. And I was like, and first of all, the whole, Braxton Jones going on IR caught me off guard. And then I saw the Justin press conference. And then I was like, okay, Justin's finally, fed up and he's speaking out. And then the bigger, news comes out with the resignation of Alan Williams. So yeah, it was just one, big headline after another. And I was like, you kind of trying to wrap your mind around which one affects them, thinking about this game on Sunday, which one's going to probably affect them the most. Obviously, the Braxton Jones injury is big, is huge. The Justin Fields coming out and saying, I'm frustrated. I'm playing like a robot. I'm thinking too much. That could be a huge impact in terms of this Bears offense, in terms of how they're designed and how they, start, trying to, incorporate his ability to make plays with his legs in the offense, and how that can help the offense, hopefully positively. In terms of Alan Williams, honestly, guys, I've just strictly as a defensive coordinator, strictly in terms of what he does on Sundays, I've been a critic of him since last year. Him not being there this past week, I thought the defense, even though they still gave up some big plays, I thought they were a little bit more aggressive. We saw some blitzes there by Eberflus, as he was calling that defensive unit. So I think on the field, I think they only have a chance to get better, to be honest with you. It's not like they're gonna lose Alan Williams and their defense is gonna go in a tank. So it's for me, it's not really a big factor in terms of them, moving forward. The only way it could affect them, it will be on the coaching staff. Not now. Matt Eberflus has taken on the role of defensive coordinator. Obviously, once you're doing that, you're kind of dividing up your time between the offense and the other portions or other responsibilities as being a head coach. So, the thing is, will he, look from within to name a defensive coordinator? That is my guess. Last week I joked, is Rod Marinelli available as a senior advisor? That could be great right now for someone who can come in and maybe just work home games, or just, help during the week and put together game plans. I'm not sure, but that's how I see it there. For me, the biggest impact though is Justin Fields, how this offense moves forward now with two starting offensive linemen missing for him.
Aldo, I'll bring you in on this, because what do you think that they do? Do they name a defensive coordinator? Do they just keep things? I'm sure we'll find out soon, but is it in their best interest to upgrade, or I should say promote someone to defensive coordinator and maybe bestow play calling abilities to them? Or should Matt Eberflus just take control, not name a defensive coordinator, and just kind of leave the structure as it is?
Well, he was asked how he's going to spend his time, and he said that he's currently spending 50% of the time with the offense and 50% of the time with the defense. And that doesn't seem like it's what a defensive coordinator should be doing. A guy who was preparing for a Kansas City Chiefs offense that is ready at any moment to explode and start getting back to the way they used to play offense. We'll talk more about their offensive struggles a little later. But if he wants to continue to split his time equally with the offense and defense, because both frankly need the attention of a head coach and somebody to oversee what's going on, then he should definitely promote somebody from within, a veteran coach like John Hoke, the secondary coach to the defensive coordinator, or then he should assume more time with the defensive coordinator's role and then name an assistant head coach. And this is probably all, it goes to Ryan Poles. He's got to come in here and take control of this situation, because the team is certainly depleted now from a coaching perspective, and the players were not at all aware, according to Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune, they were not at all aware what the status was with their defensive coordinator. Briggs quoted players as saying, yeah, this is kind of weird. I haven't been told anything. So things have to be cleared up. And Eberflus talked today about, the players really need to focus. Well, it's going to be really, really hard. And so somebody has to step in tomorrow morning and say, okay, this is a new structure. This is the new alignment. Let's get to work and kick some ass on Sunday.
Danny, are you cool with Eberflus just taking control of play calling abilities for the rest of the season, or would you like to see him? I know there's a couple of names that you were thinking of that potentially move into that DC role.
Yeah, John Hoke, we talked about before, a secondary coach, was here with Lovie Smith. He's well and grind with his defensive scheme. Borgozzi, Dave Borgozzi, who was linebackers coach, who he brought with him from the Colts, is another guy that's highly thought of in the coaching ranks. However, guys, no one other than Matt Eberflus or Alan Williams have ever called plays in the NFL. So with Alan Williams gone now, I think Eberflus has to take over that responsibility. Now he could kind of dilly up some of the week to the daily weekly kind of responsibilities of being a defensive coordinator to one of those other two guys, have him kind of run the meetings and do some of the installs. But I think he should take command in terms of being the defensive play caller on Sundays, because for quite honestly, he's the only one who's actually done it at the NFL level.
And just from what we saw last week with Eberflus calling plays, they were a little more aggressive. Do you think with Eberflus now having more of his hands on the defense that we're going to see a more aggressive defense with more blitzing? Aldo, I'll start with you and then Danny jump in.
Well, and as we'll learn later when we preview the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a team that's having trouble with their two veteran tackles. They've been jumping off sides. The right tackle jumped off sides 5 times against Jacksonville alone. And so this is an opportunity for these defensive ends to create pressure. And for the Chiefs do have a very strong interior offensive line. But nonetheless, we need to galvanize these front 4 linemen so that Eberflus can play his style of defense. 7 men back, 4 guys rushing the quarterback and putting pressure on Patrick Mahomes and disrupting his rhythm and passing. And that shouldn't be that difficult. This is a team that has had trouble scoring points. And so this is an opportunity. That's really the way the Chicago Bears have to quickly turn this thing around. This is an opportunity for Matt Eberflus to put his stamp on this defense and get some positive results and get their second sack of the season. They only have 1 all season. So let's get to work, guys.
Danny, we talked about this at length after the game, where they were more aggressive and they didn't sack Baker Mayfield, but Ngakoue had a few free runs at him but couldn't bring him down. Is it just a matter of finishing now?
Right. And then Aldo hit on a spot there in terms of the Chiefs offensive line. The interior is that strongest point for them. So the ends are going to have some opportunities. And I think this is where Ngakoue or maybe even Khalid Kareem can get in there and provide some pressure off the outside and maybe get Patrick Mahomes down for a sack. So yeah, and for me in terms of this overall philosophy with this defense, obviously the front 4 is the main component there, but you got to bring some added pressure when you're not getting to the quarterback. So as the game goes along and if you see that the front 4 isn't doing it, they're just not getting to Patrick Mahomes, he's getting rid of the football real quick, you got to bring in somebody else in terms of just generating some sort of extra pressure to put the opposing quarterback, some fear into the opposing quarterback that he's actually going to, get his jersey dirty. So unfortunately, the Bears haven't been able to do none of that through the first 2 weeks. So that, hopefully with Eberflus taking over, he will be a little bit more aggressive there.
Yeah, the way I look at it is you can pick your poison against Patrick Mahomes. You want him to go after him and then he burns you on some one-on-one coverage, or do you want him just to pick apart a soft zone the entire time? I'd rather go down swinging with some aggressive play calls. So we'll see what happens. But not to be outdone, the offense had its fair share of drama today with Justin Fields, with some of his comments that the media may have ran with a little bit and picking apart and chopping apart 1 or 2 words and then throwing it up there. But he did, I believe, but we do have some of his press conference to share with you right now, and then we'll talk about it. So go ahead, Aldo. Go ahead and roll that.
I felt like, I wasn't necessarily playing my game. I felt like I was kind of robotic and, not playing like myself. So, my goal this week is just to, say F it and just go out there and, play football how I know how to play football. And that's not, that includes thinking less and just going out there and, playing off of instincts rather than just so much, so to say, info in my head, data in my head, and literally just going out there playing football. I mean, just going back to it's a game, and that's it, because that's when, I play my best is when I'm just out there playing free and being myself. So I'm going to say kind of just bump all the, what I should do, what I, this and that, like pocket stuff, like I'm going to go out there and be me.
So those comments that he eventually, called another quasi press conference at his locker to make sure that people knew that he wasn't trying to blame the coaching staff. And I applaud him for, taking control of the situation. But Danny, we've talked about this quite a bit throughout the season so far. Is it seems like this offensive scheme is almost paralyzing him back there. And so he's going to take this new, screw it attitude, so to speak, and just play. What do you think that means necessarily?
I think first of all, when I heard him say this, I was yelling like, yes, finally, Justin, just go out there and just, let your frustrations out, because I was frustrated for him watching the tape, breaking it down. You'd see the guy looking at the receiver wide open, but he's just not pulling the trigger. So my question is, why wasn't he pulling the trigger? And then, so apparently from what it sounds like, it's like, he's been told this is how you operate through the pocket. This is how you go through your progression. 1, 2, 3, 4, however the progression is supposed to be. And that was kind of just like weighing on him. And you could tell he wasn't even trying to get out of the pocket and escape. So something was off, and he just wasn't playing out there loose and free. And even I mentioned last week, I believe it was after the game, I was like, when they go up tempo, when there's no huddle, they're just kind of free flowing, you could tell he's a little more comfortable there for whatever reason. So for me, what this means is we'll see some of the stuff that last year we saw in terms of, that Patriots game plan, where we see some more design quarterback runs. We'll see some more RPOs. They'll see him rolling out, kind of moving his launch point, not saying, strictly in that pocket, because everyone wants him to be a pocket passer, but he will also have to make some plays from the pocket. So, and then, we have seen him make throws from the pocket. Like, for example, the hitch routes, the Bears run a lot of hitch routes with the receivers. Those are, we watch the tape, he's comfortable there, 1, 2, 3, bam, ball is out. So there's certain route concepts that, that from the pocket that are comfortable, that he likes. And there's ones that he's just not, comfortable yet. But, it's not just abandon the pocket, offense and just go strictly, play yard or playground kind of, football. It's kind of incorporate, his ability to kind of create with his legs, but also then incorporate some plays that he likes, that he's comfortable with in the pocket, to kind of create an offense that kind of, is built around him and not just strictly a scheme.
Be careful when you say you want more hitch routes, Danny. We've been through that road before. I'm kidding. But Aldo, do you think Justin maybe looked at his tape last week and saw some of that hesitation where those he pumped the ball instead of just letting it rip, and maybe he saw some of that and said, I need to just go out there and if he's analyzing himself, I'm tired of just trying to be a robot motioning through those things and just throw it, because we did see some hesitation to throw the ball when there were open receivers last week.
Listen, this is a guy who worked with Luke Getsy during the preseason to become a pocket passer and proclaimed that he was going to pass for 4,000 yards. That's how confident he felt that he can throw from the pocket and do it well. Now, when things are not working 2 games into the season, he did at one point said it could be the coaching. And he's clearly frustrated because he's not the pocket passer he thought he was, and he's not ever going to be that. At least not with this coach, because sometimes coaches and players don't align. And it certainly sounds to me like he and Luke Getsy are not aligned. And he wanted to be aligned with Luke Getsy, but the frustrations that he's going through as a quarterback and all the bad press that he's getting, I mean, he's being talked about on national media shows, and Dan Orlovsky is giving these breakdowns on, that he can't see the field. And all of a sudden he's gone from a media darling to a huge question mark whether he can play quarterback at all in the National Football League. So I think that's what we saw today, was a frustrated young man. Now, I got to say this. The evidence is there on tape. Danny and I see it slightly different. There are guys who are open. And so Danny saw that, and he's wondering, why didn't he throw the ball? Why didn't he pull the trigger? I think it's because he's not seeing things. He's thinking too much. And so at what point is that going to get resolved? Because if you're scrambling around and running around, that obstacle that you have about hitting the open man is still going to be there. So we're going to rely on him to rush for over 1,000 yards again, get battered, and not have a real quarterback, a guy who can throw for at least 3,000 yards. He's not going to do that this year, even with DJ Moore. So I'm frustrated with the fact that it doesn't look like he's going to be able to progress to a point where he can be a solid pocket passer and then use his athleticism to put some icing on the cake and create a dynamic player. He can't be that baseline pocket passer. That's what I saw with Mitchell Trubisky, and that's what I'm seeing now with Justin Fields.
I totally disagree with you, Aldo. So going back to this past game, right? The Bucs had 6 sacks. I went through the tape. I went through every single sack. 3 of those sacks, there are receivers open. Justin needed to get rid of the football. So 3 of those sacks are on Justin. And that I think I said 2 after the game, but it actually was 3. And the other 3 were just, he had no chance. He was even killed behind the offensive line. But either way, in terms of his development, there are quarterbacks that can be successful being athletic like Justin and also being able to play from the pocket. He's not going to ever be just strictly a pocket passing quarterback like, say, Peyton Manning was, or like some of the other other quarterbacks that just strictly make all their decisions in the pocket. What you can do is you can kind of help his progression get there, right? So, for example, and when anyone says dumb down the offense, that's a really bad negative term. It's not what I'm trying to say. It's just make it more simple, more easier for him to go ahead and go through those progressions. For example, if you do 12 personnel, maybe you run 2 guys in the route. Because if you look at the offense they're running, I mean, the offense was discombobulated. I mean, even some of the national media guys you just mentioned, Dan Orlovsky and some of the other guys, they're saying they're not understanding the concepts of what the Bears were trying to do on offense. It just looked like, Getsy was doing like a Matt Nagy, just pulling plays out of his playbook and just running them out there. So, I mean, there are receivers that were running wrong routes. At one point, there was a route where 2 receivers were within 4 yards of each other. There's offensive linemen were confused in terms of the whole team offense was running slow. Receivers weren't getting off the line of scrimmage. We're talking about Tyler Scott, who's got 4.3 speed. He's not running full speed. So, there was confusion amongst the entire offense. My thing was, let's make it simple for the entire system, for the entire offense. Let's get this team some confidence, this offensive unit. And then now if you can fix that defense and make them respectable, now you have an opportunity, maybe, stay in some games and hopefully win some games. So, but what they were doing, the pressure was all on Justin. Everything was, being pushed on Justin. And I'm not absolving him of his bad decision-making and of his bad play. I'm just saying it wasn't all him. The whole offense was broken. And I think maybe the players coming to him, whether it was just Justin, whether it's some other players going to Getsy saying, hey, just let's do something different. Let's just try and make it a little bit less complicated for everybody. I think Darnell Mooney earlier in the week, he said, they talked about the report asked him about, what do you say to Justin when you see opportunities, that he hasn't thrown a ball to you guys? He goes, we just got to tell him, just trust us. Just throw the ball. If it's a pick, it's on us. If it's thrown over our heads, it's on it. Don't worry about it. Just give us an opportunity to make a play on the football. And I'm hoping that's what we see going forward now.
And I think we kind of had this conversation last year after the Washington game on Thursday night, which was just a horrendous game. But we kind of had the conversation of, would you rather Justin Fields throw 3 touchdowns and 2 picks, or 0 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, or I should say 0 picks, 1 touchdown? Which one would you rather have? Because at this point, the defense is not going to step up and win the game for you. So I'd rather my quarterback throw 3 touchdowns and maybe make 2 bad throws, but maybe you can win a shootout because he rushes another one in or something like that. Would we rather just let it loose and possibly Jameis Winston it up a little bit, but still put some points on?
You don't want to go there either.
Well,
you don't want to go.
Yeah, a bit of an exaggeration, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take chances. I mean, you got to take an opportunity. This is a team now that's got DJ Moore on the outside. You have Claypool, who, whatever you guys think about him, he's a big body receiver. I'm not too high on him right now, but you have some athletes on this offense here, and the best 2 players are the quarterback and DJ Moore, sprinkling a little Darnell Mooney here and there. But you got to be able to generate some offense. The offensive line that we talked about, 2 starters are down now. You have a makeshift offensive line. They're not going to get that much better that you can sit back there and do 5-step, 7-step drops, run these long routes down the football field. So you got to make things a little bit less complicated, a little more easier for the whole entire unit. And also, one thing that Getsy's done these first 2 games is he's abandoned the running attack. That's the thing that they thrived last year was, that's what young quarterbacks need, especially guys that are developing, that are having some struggles early on. Have a nice running attack that you can rely on. Obviously, a great defense that gives them great field position will be even excellent, but that's not going to be the case here anytime soon. So, just give them some help in terms of the running attack. Give him some more easier concepts in the pocket, and then I'll incorporate him in that with his ability to kind of make some extra plays with his legs, incorporate that in the offense as well. So I think that's where you can kind of see some confidence growing within the entire offensive unit, and hopefully that leads to some points.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone on planet Earth would disagree with Danny when he says there's blame to go around. That is certainly true. I'm just still concerned that 3 years in, that this quarterback is showing so much of what Mitchell Trubisky showed. He's the broadcast started, the Tampa Bay broadcast started, and he was seated on the bench and he had his eyes closed and it looked like he was into this meditation thing. And I'm wondering, this guy played on a national championship game in front of 80,000 fans and millions of people around the world watching. Why does he seem so nervous? Isn't he grasping the moment? And so I'm glad to hear him say, F it, I'm going to play my style. And so hopefully we'll see a turnaround. And I pray that I'm wrong and that Danny's right, that this guy is going to turn out to be the quarterback, because I don't want to go through this rebuilding process every 2-3 years.
Yeah, one thing, if I have a chance there, John, just when Trubisky, although you might remember this, I was one of the first ones that said this kid doesn't have it. This kid just does not have the ability to process in the pocket. He's even when you roll him out, you do half field reads. There was times he would struggle. So I was one of the first ones I didn't see it in Trubisky. And in scouting, we have this term called dudes, right? Dudes, the football players are dudes. So dudes know other dudes. And when you would mention Trubisky to other NFL players, they would laugh. They would laugh out. They would literally laugh out loud about him. Right, because they knew he wasn't really what everyone was kind of building him up to be. When you talk about Justin Fields, NFL players respect Justin Fields. His team lost 10 games in a row last year, but yet his peers voted him one of the top 100 players last year in the NFL on that NFL Network poll. So there's respect for him because they know he's a player. He's got talent. He can produce. You just got to put him in the right situation to produce. And eventually, once he gets older, he gets a little more mature. Some, quarterbacks progress a little bit slower than other quarterbacks, right? Look at Geno Smith in Seattle. He was labeled a bust with the New York Jets and throughout his career. And lo and behold, it took him some time. But I'm not saying Justin's going to be on a Geno Smith path. I'm just saying, like, to some quarterbacks, just got to break them in easier in terms of getting this system going. For whatever reason, it's just not clicking right now with his sophisticated passing attack down the field. So we saw it on tape. It was painful. You had nothing to look forward to because you saw a great athlete just kind of being, paralyzed by all the stuff that was going on in his head. So hopefully this opens it up. He becomes that playmaker we talked about. We saw it last year. Again, although to your point, we don't want him running every single time. We don't want him just, one read, tuck and go. We don't want that. But we do want him to have the freedom to be able to, if you feel pressured, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and get out of there. Look downfield, see if you see anybody come open. If not, then tuck and run.
Yeah, I think if he's on the Geno Smith trajectory, he's not going to hit his stride until after he's out of Chicago. That's unfortunate. And going back to your Trubisky comments, I forget which defense it was, but they beat the Bears and they said, "What was your plan?" And they said, "We got to make Mitchell Trubisky play quarterback." I remember. I kind of remember. So you're right. There was not a whole. Yeah, not a whole lot of respect there. And to your other point, Danny, about the run game, I think between their running backs, they may have had a combined, 11 carries altogether between the committee of their running backs. They had, it was like 10 or 11 carries on the game, which is not something that you can lean on if you're only running that many times. Aldo, I want to ask you this kind of holistic question because I love prognosticating like years in advance here. But could Justin Fields be taking this new mentality because he's not stupid. He can see the writing on the wall a little bit. And, 12 straight losses, which is the most in franchise history. Everything's on the table. Everything's on the table from coaching changes to quarterback changes to everything. And so if he sees this as, if this coaching staff gets kicked out of town and they bring a new one in, are they going to want me or do I need to put some tape on to see if they ship me out? And so do I want my last year as a full-time starter to have this kind of tape on it? Or do I need to start taking over some games so in case a new regime comes in and they don't want Justin Fields because they will have 2 first-round picks to play with, maybe he's thinking I gotta start thinking about me and playing my game and putting my tape out there because you don't want to have to go the Trubisky route where you have to be a backup somewhere for a year and hopefully catch on somewhere else.
There was a strong sense of that in today's press conference. There's no doubt. He's frustrated about being a Bears quarterback, and you got to believe that these guys talk about, what has been said so many times before, millions of times before, that the Bears have never had a good quarterback, or since the days of Sid Luckman, that wide receivers, Chicago is where wide receivers go to die, and so forth. So that's the unpleasant thing for us as fans, is that we know these players might be feeling, I can't speak with absolute certainty, but might be feeling that playing in Chicago on an offense in Chicago is a sinking ship. That it's in yesterday's Bear Their Souls show, I talked about it's like the Bears are cursed. It's like Ditka should have given Walter Payton that touchdown. Somebody threw a curse on us that was a Payton fan. And, I totally hear what you're saying. I do think that he is putting his foot down and saying, yes, I'm eligible for contract talks next year and getting that extension, that 5th-year extension, which would be about $20 million. And so he certainly doesn't want to be restricted into the pocket where he's having his problems with. And Danny's talked about this too. The offensive line is not going to, particularly now that Braxton Jones is gone, it's not going to instill much more confidence in the poor guy. So he's going to go out there and do it himself. We've seen it happen in Chicago with Michael Jordan. He said, hey, nobody else around me can score. Heck, I'll score 63 against the Boston Celtics in a playoff game. So maybe he's going to do the same thing, although they lost that game.
Well, yeah. Well, they lost those games that he took over last year too, but he wasn't the issue. They were, in this 12-game losing streak, they've given up over 25 points every game. So he was not exactly the main issue with those games they were losing last year, because they were putting up points, but they were giving up way more. Danny, you alluded to the offensive line, so let's pivot to that. Braxton Jones going on the IR, and now it's like, okay, now what's the offensive line carousel going to look like? It seems like they want to keep Darnell Wright over at the right tackle, which, if as a rookie, I think you probably want to build some stability at that position. But where do you go with left tackle? Is that a Larry Borum job? What's going on?
Well, today, apparently Larry Borum was there at left tackle at practice. So I think they're going to go and start Larry Borum there at left tackle. And now they did mention Jatir Carter, who's been playing mainly left guard, and he's been filling out right guard. Who, by the way, had other than a couple of snaps there, had a pretty solid game for his first career start. So Jatir Carter was a left tackle at college. So he's athletic enough to play there in terms of the athletic ability. The length could be a different issue there. So I think they're going to start off with Larry Borum and see where it goes there. I think that they signed Avante Collins to the practice squad, to the actual active roster. He'll probably be the swing tackle. In terms of Darnell Wright, I would leave him at right tackle. He's a rookie. I know he played left tackle at Tennessee 2 years ago, but I think right tackle is his spot in terms of the NFL's future. So I would just leave him there, let him learn there, and get him settled in. Hopefully Nate Davis comes back and he's dealt with the loss of his his loved one, and he's gone through some stuff there. Hopefully he's back on in terms of his head being back on straight now, and he's back into the business of football. And they could form a nice dynamic duo there on that right side, because that's what I was looking forward to at the beginning of the season, is those two manhandling people at the line of scrimmage, and then the Bears using them to be able to build that rushing attack. So Lucas Patrick has looked decent at center. He's obviously a better center than he is guard. Unfortunately, Cody Whitehair, I think he's done. I mean, he's struggling badly at left guard. He was supposed to be the center. So maybe once Tevin Jenkins comes back, they can kick him back inside to center. But right now that left side is a big question mark, and that's something I'm going to be very concerned about. Not only this week, but in future weeks to come.
And Aldo, we're talking about when this person comes back, then you got to build that chemistry back up, because Tevin Jenkins hasn't been in the starting lineup at all this year. Braxton Jones won't be back for at least 4 weeks or whatever it is on that IR, maybe longer, who knows. Yeah. So now you got this rotating line, which they had to deal with in years past. And it wasn't all that great to begin with. So are we going to see more screen passes now? Because even more than we've already seen. Are we going to see more of those? Or could we see possibly try to take advantage of an aggressive defense, or try to take advantage of that by some designed Justin Fields runs on the outside? What could we possibly see with this makeshift line?
Well, I think you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. You're going to see a lot
Maybe
of Mercedes Lewis, and I think we should be seeing a dedication to the run game. There's no doubt about it. And so I know we'd love to see an aerial attack with those 3 wide receivers, Mooney, Claypool, and more, but you really don't have the offensive line to do that with great confidence. I do have a thought regarding Darnell Wright. I'm not going to pound the table and say move Darnell Wright to left tackle, but if you are thinking about it, now is the time to do it, because I recall when the Bears acquired Kyle Long, and he was so athletic. He could have easily have played left tackle, and who knows, he could have maybe had a longer career at the tackle position than at the guard, where there's so many bodies flying around and tripping over and falling and hurting yourself. Moving Darnell Wright to left tackle, it could be the solution to the left tackle position for the next 10 years. And the only reason I'm saying that is because after the first 2 years, after the first 2 games, we saw Braxton Jones struggle mightily. And perhaps he's not that left tackle. At the end of last year, I was saying, we don't need a left tackle. This guy is going to be our left tackle for the next 10 years. Like Danny was saying, that we would have those 2 edge guys. But now I'm not so sure. And so maybe we should seriously consider putting Darnell Wright at left tackle. And I believe that Larry Borom could play the right tackle better than the left tackle, but I'm not absolutely sure of that either.
Yeah, Danny, do you think we see a lot of help from the tight ends bringing it in to try to get some max protect in there? Because, like, once again, we're not overly sure about this line. We weren't sure about the original one, and we're certainly not sure about the one that's going to be trotting out there on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not too sold on Larry Borom playing left tackle either. I'm with Aldo there, and yes, I expect to see a lot of 12 personnel. Even if the tight end does end up chipping and releasing into the pattern into a route pattern, but I do see that side now getting a little bit more attention. Hopefully, at least I hope the offense coordinator will recognize that and give some more help to Larry Borom until he either play shows that he can handle it. And surprises all of us, or until they get someone in there that can potentially fill that spot until Braxton Jones comes back. I mean, Eberflus today didn't rule out possibly this could be a season-ending injury. He didn't rule that out either. He just said he's on IR for now. So we'll see. Hopefully, it's not a season-ending injury, because as Aldo said, I had high hopes for Braxton Jones coming into the second season, and I thought he was going to be the stalwart there, left tackle. But he was off to a slow start. Very disappointing. Watching him live on Sundays and also going through the tape. Just even more disheartening in terms of, just look confused in terms of his assignments and some of the things that I thought he was going to get better at this year, which was, taking on more power, being able to sustain a bull rush, still lacking in that area so far after 2 games only. So.
Let's kind of pivot to the run game a little bit, or lack thereof, because they have not been running the ball effectively. Hadn't really been running the ball at all as far as a numbers standpoint goes. So they seem to be happy with this weird committee-ish kind of thing. But is it necessary to have that committee if you're only combining for 11 or 12 carries a game? And who should be that number one back? Danny, I know you were kind of on the fence about keeping Khalil Herbert in there for a while until Roschon could really take the reins, but has your opinion changed on that at all?
No, I really do like Khalil Herbert. I think he's a guy that could give you a good 12, 15 carries, and then now you rotate Roschon Johnson in whether it's 8 to 10 touches, and then if you want to bring in a Deontay Foreman, gives you more of a downhill thumper in between the tackles kind of runner. It gives you that nice little variety. So, but the only problem is staying committed as a play caller to the run game. So, a lot of times, if you're trying to pass on first downs and there's an incompletion or a loss, a 2nd and 12, it's not a really ideal situation to start running the football. So I think you got to start, just mixing it in, a nice balance. I'm not saying just be a ground and pound kind of team. I'm just saying mix the run game and have nice even balance, and then allow Herbert and Roschon Johnson and even Deontay Foreman to kind of get a good sweat going and try and churn some yards there on the ground. That only helps your quarterback, but also gets confidence in the offensive linemen as everyone I've ever talked to in terms of offensive linemen say they love run blocking better than pass blocking. So.
And Aldo, do you think that do you think the way that the season goes will have any effect on that? Where if the season is completely lost, which it kind of already seems like it is after 2 games, but if it completely gets out of hand, where they're already eliminated from playoff contention halfway through, or they're close to that, do they get the rookie more time to see what they got in him as they get more evaluation time?
Absolutely. You've got to. This was not ever going to be a 1-year rebuild. And so the player evaluation probably is the key and was the key the entire time. Yeah, we were all hoping for, a push for the playoffs that would show really good development and an expedited development plan by Ryan Poles. But he told us before the draft, I can't address all of the holes that we have on this team. So he basically told everybody, this is a 3-year plan. And so we've got to find out who we have and what they can do. The problem, of course, is that if you've got injuries, it makes it really, really difficult for the player next to you to play well, because you're inserting somebody you just picked up off the street or didn't go through preseason or whatever, doesn't know the playbook and so forth. But you're absolutely right. At a certain point in the season, we've got to invest in developing players and just suck it up. It's going to be another losing season, but at least we could potentially see in individual players, them developing and being guys that we can circle and say, these guys can help us win championships.
You say 3-year rebuild, Aldo, and I hope that you're right, because I'm not overly confident that this is even going to be a 3-year rebuild, given what we're looking at, the longest losing streak in franchise history. You're supposed to be able to fall ass backwards into a win every once in a while, and they keep finding different ways to lose. So that'll kind of bring me up to this next topic of, I know that, last year we were very patient because they stripped everything down to the studs and there was nothing there. And this was, getting the contracts off the books, accumulating draft capital, moving into the second year. But we're getting to the point where we were supposed to see real progress, and we're not seeing anything. We're seeing the same thing with different players, which you can say is on the coaching staff, which is on scheme, which is on maybe the GM for who he's bringing in or whatever. But, Danny, I'll start with you, and then I'll pivot over to Aldo. Is it too soon to start thinking, hey, that seat's getting hot, given what you're seeing on the field and now off the field?
Guys, I'm not usually the guy that raises his hands and says, yes, fire the staff. But I mean, it's getting to the point where I'm starting to question a lot of what this coaching staff has done. I mean, last year we talked about, they play a lot of young guys. A lot of young guys got a lot of playing time with hopes of them maturing, getting better, and this year, developing. So far, I haven't seen any young player develop so far. Again, it's been a year and 2 games, right? But I haven't seen any young player develop and get better from last year to this year, right? Whether it's Brisker or Kyle Gordon was having a good training camp, but he got hurt. We talked about Braxton Jones not really taking the next step up. Obviously, we've talked about Justin and some of his struggles early on. So are you a staff that can develop players, and are you a staff that can put players in position where they can succeed? And so far, they have not gotten to that point. And I've been a big advocate I hate this defensive scheme. I'm not a fan of this defensive scheme. I always wanted someone that can come in here, a head coach that has some offensive chops, some offensive background to help your young quarterback develop and grow. We talked about it last year, or I think it was last week, in terms of if you fire the offensive coordinator, who calls plays now? If you had a head coach that has the offensive, play calling ability, even if you got rid of an offensive coordinator, he would then take over, the duties of kind of grooming your quarterback and getting him ready. So yeah, so for me, obviously we'll see how this season plays out. It's only 2 games, right? It's not over yet. Only 1 game out of first place, guys. By the way, only 1 game out of first place. So we'll see how the season plays out. And if this streak that they're on, which is, John, you mentioned it, 12 games in a row they've lost, average of 25 or more, that's never happened in NFL history. Okay, if this continues and this goes into October, right? There's got to be a change. I mean, they've become the laughing stock of the NFL. I mean, they are what we used to call the Cleveland Browns. Where now we wish we had the Browns roster, especially on defense. So it's like, this has become really, really bad, really quick. And I know we always see prospects coming in and new GMs and new head coaches. I'm not advocating to kind of clear house, but if this continues and this defense continues not to put up or get better, I should say, and you're a defensive-minded head coach, what are you doing?
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to why I think it's more leaning towards that hot seat, Aldo, is because you were brought in because of the way you could run a defense. And throughout this historic losing streak, your defense has been atrocious. Your specialty, which what you were supposed to bring to this team, has been an absolute liability. Now, clearly the offense is not pulling its weight either. But even in last year, when the offense was scoring points, the defense couldn't do anything. And you think that even with a lower amount of talent on that side of the ball, that's your specialty. That's your bread and butter. You're supposed to be able to scheme something up that's supposed to, even once throughout that 10-game losing streak, you think you would have schemed something up that would have worked, but it didn't. It gave up a lot of points. So if you were brought in because of how you could be a CEO, and especially about how you ran a defense, and your defense has been awful, even when you pump $100 million into it, isn't that kind of an indictment on how you're running the team?
It is a cause for an investigation. I'm not ready to indict them yet. I listened to Andy Reid's press conference. The head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs was asked about Matt Eberflus, and he said, listen, the first 3-4 weeks of the regular season are basically an extended preseason. Everybody all the players have rust on them. Everyone is learning what routes to run, because of what's happened with the CBA and the lack of practice time and so forth. We really won't get to see this Chicago Bears defense in full force until around Kansas City and next week's game against, Denver next week? So I think we have to give Eberflus a little bit of time. And then when you compound that with the injuries, when you're counting on Eddie Jackson, and Eddie, is clearly over the hill now, but when you're counting on him to be your starting safety, and you got your other young, very promising safety in Jaquan Brisker getting banged up, and he's starting to raise concerns whether he has the durability, a gene to play in the NFL. And then you've got some other injuries elsewhere. You got to take that into account with Matt Eberflus. I'm not a big fan of him. I prefer a head coach who has a presence in the room, where when he starts to talk, you want to listen, and that he answers questions in a way that motivates you. And Eberflus doesn't have that. He's very, very similar to an insurance salesman that I had, who I actually canceled my policy with because he was just too boring to talk to.
Danny, at what point, if the streak gets to 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I think my boy Torian Whitfield just brought this up, but if the losing streak gets up to 16 or 17, like eventually the heat's going to get to be too much, right? Like eventually, like if you lose 16 or 17 straight, eventually we've seen people get fired for way less. So when does the heat get turned up? I know the Bears don't fire people in the middle of the season. They probably won't. But like still, like when does it get almost insurmountable?
Well, I mean, it's obviously he's going to get the whole season, so he's not going to get fired. If Mark Trestman doesn't get fired after that debacle, no coach is going to get fired in midseason, right? So, so that's the thing, is he's going to get the whole season. Like Aldo said, this is a team that hopefully does get better as the season goes on, and then shows improvement. But even the building of the roster, like I had a big issue with the first two picks when they came in, Poles and Eberflus were secondary players. And then in the last year, this offseason, they went and they spent big money on linebackers. It's like you build your defense from the line out, not from the back of the defensive backfield in. So, and that's just really weird, especially for this scheme, for this type of, your front four is the engine of the scheme, right? Your front four has got to get after the quarterback. That's how everything runs. It's that three technique, the edge rusher, the middle linebacker, and then your safety in the middle. So the whole way that this thing was built was really just ass backwards, for my opinion, and that really pissed me off. And now we're just seeing that right now. We're seeing a defensive line that you went and you spent on Ngakoue, but we saw why he's been on every new team for the last 5-6 years. He's a guy that will flash, will get you a sack here or there. And I was the one who wanted Ngakoue because we needed someone to actually get pressure on the quarterback. But if you get to the quarterback and you can't bring down Baker Mayfield, I mean, what good are you then? So, and then the defensive line, the run defense still is there's holes like in it like Swiss cheese. It's just it's a mess, and that's why I was getting frustrated this week, because everything's being put on Justin in terms of this team's 0-2 start. But it wasn't just Justin; it was every facet of the game, every facet of the team, I should say, was struggling. Besides, actually, you know what? I take back. Special teams has been okay so far. The kicker's been making his kicks. We had a block punt. Or I'm sorry, block field goal last week. So coverage units have been okay. So other than special teams, every other facet of this team sucks right now.
Look at that glimmer of hope you're bringing. Special teams. That's right. I want to end on this, fellas. Obviously, the Bears they still play football, and they have to play a game on Sunday, and they're going to be playing against the Kansas City Chiefs, which will have some a familiar face over there. I want to over under. How many times they do an ISO shot on Matt Nagy, and then over under how many times do they mention that the Bears passed up drafting Patrick Mahomes? How many times do you think they bring? Because eventually, if the game gets out of hand, and this is coming from an old broadcaster, if the game is like out of hand and there's like a 20-point lead in the third and fourth quarter, you start looking through your book of like, what are we going to talk about? Oh, let's talk about the Bears passing on Patrick Mahomes again. We got 9 graphics for that. Oh, let's talk about Matt Nagy and Mitch Trubisky and how he got ran out of Chicago and how this is his revenge game or whatever, and how he's so awesome now. Over under on Matt Nagy and Patrick Mahomes not being drafted references.
I'd like to put it at 2.5, and I think it's going to go over. This is the national game on Fox, the afternoon game, and typically those national games, they really dig into the storytelling. They want to, talk about a particular player, a coach, and so forth. And so you're absolutely right, John. They're going to mention that. I think Mahomes probably will be mentioned once, but I got a feeling Nagy's going to be mentioned over about 3 times. And by the way, in the videotape regarding the Chiefs, I have a quick shot of Matt Nagy just to irritate all of us Chicago Bears fans. So
just keep poking us.
We'll see a lot of them on Sunday. We'll definitely see a lot of them on Sunday.
Danny, how many times do you think there's going to be a graphic or a slideshow of like the 2016 or 2017 draft with the Trubisky, and it's like here, and then Mahomes went here, and Watson went before that, and the Bears traded up, and they took Mitch Trubisky. How many times? Because that's probably good filler for them. They can kill a good 30 seconds on that, showing what the Bears did, and then Andy Reid and the Chiefs were brilliant in drafting Patrick Mahomes, but there's no guarantee that Patrick Mahomes would be Patrick Mahomes if he came to Chicago.
Well, it didn't help that the former director of player personnel, Josh Lucas, went on a local station here, radio station, and they asked him about the draft, and he said it was between Trubisky and Mahomes that was, and then they just had a little better feeling about Trubisky, and that's why they went with Trubisky. So that's how close it was to being Aldo's quarterback of that draft class, Patrick Mahomes. That's the guy he wanted. He was telling me, I'm like, what? Patrick Mahomes? Yep. I got tip of hat cap to Aldo that he wanted him. But I think the over under on the Mahomes thing will probably be maybe like 1 or 2. So maybe if you have a 1.5, you get a little bit over there. But the Nagy thing is going to be all over, because I think Nagy's been struggling. The KC offense has been struggling, and I think this is going to be his opportunity to put a 50 burger up on Matt Eberflus's defense. And I think if he has a chance to do that, he's going to run up the score, not only to help him in KC say, hey, look, I know what I'm doing, but also kind of rub it into Chicago there. And so this could be a 50 burger game, guys. Get ready for
my
it.
fear was that the Bears are going to be everyone. I said this after the game. It's going to be everyone's get right game. Oh, is your defense struggling? Don't worry, the Bears are coming to town. Your offense struggling? Oh, don't worry, we're going to Chicago. So we're going to be everyone's get right game for from here on out. Moving forward. And I can't say much about that draft either, because I wanted to draft Jamal Adams and then take DeShone Kizer in the second round. So I can't say much about that because I would have ruined the Bears as well. So, but that's why I'm not being paid to run the Bears. That's why people are better than me are supposed to make those decisions. But that's neither here nor there. That'll basically wrap it up. That we covered a whole lot of stuff here in the first 54 minutes of this show. So, like I said, the Bears do have to play a football game on Sunday. So, Aldo, I believe you have a preview video for us about the Chiefs.
That's right. I studied the Kansas City Chiefs with some help from my guy, Matt Connor from Arrowhead Addict. And he brought up a lot of good points that I've included in this video. Let's take a look.
I mean, obviously, too many penalties, too many miscues.
Patrick Mahomes could have been referring to the Chicago Bears offense, but instead he's talking about the Chiefs. Their offense is ranked 22nd in NFL scoring, tied with the Bears. And just like the Bears, they have opportunities to self-correct.
Things are there. You look at it on tape, things are there, but we're going backwards instead of forward. And if you look at percentages, even with a 5-yard penalty, percentages of scoring on a drive with a penalty is slim to none. We've been able to do that, probably better than anybody in the league, but you're getting these multiples put together here, and that's it's too much.
The Chiefs scored 20 points against the Lions in their Week 1 loss. Sunday, they beat the Jaguars, but scored only 17.
The Chiefs are still very much adjusting to a lot of new personnel. Really, it's been the peeling away of some familiar offensive layers for the Chiefs after trading Tyreek Hill a year ago. And offensively, they're still looking like, can I trust you? Will you be where I need you to be with all of the wide receivers?
KC's offense is currently a testing laboratory with mad scientist Patrick Mahomes leading the experiments.
Mahomes is such a playground quarterback. He's such an ad-libber, despite even the technical prowess of the offense. Like there's so much verbiage in Andy Reid's offense that typically rookies or new guys have a hard time as it is. And then add on the fact that Mahomes wants you to be able to conduct yourself with solid instincts and knowledge on the fly.
Today, Mahomes spoke about the need to find the rhythm and get players like veteran Marquise Valdez-Scantling more involved.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been great offensively just in general. So I think as the offense gets going and we start finding our rhythm, you're going to start seeing those shots of Marquez down the field. You're going to see them be more involved in the offense. But when you can't stay in rhythm, and that's me included, as an offense, it's hard to get the guys the targets that they deserve and that they should get. And so we have to find that rhythm and find the way to spread the ball around and then get the guys the catches so that we can go out there and have a better offensive day.
Super tight end Travis Kelce missed the opener against the Lions, but fought back to play against the Jags.
He had 9 targets on Sunday. He played in 2/3 of the snaps. There were a couple key moments where you could tell Mahomes went to ad-libbing again and had to go right back to Kelce because no one else can really do what he does, finding the soft areas in zone coverage. I think Bears fans can look forward to a Travis Kelce as normal in Week 3.
At the running back position, Isaiah Pacheco is the team's lead back. He did not practice Wednesday with a hamstring contusion, but is likely to play.
And they feature him probably on 50% of downs. Then you have Jarrett McKinnon, who comes in as the third down back. He's the most trusted back of Patrick Mahomes, whether as a rusher or a receiver. So he gets a lot more play than maybe he would on other teams because of his relationship and the trust there. He's also a great pass protector. After that, you really have nothing. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was their first-round pick. He doesn't do anything particularly well, which is maddening for fans after having used a first-round pick on him.
The Bears' defensive line showed improvement against the Bucs, but still came up empty with sacks. What will they face in KC?
Look, on the interior, I would take the Chiefs' offensive interior against any other line in football. Maybe the Eagles, maybe Cleveland, but Creed Humphrey is a Pro Bowler. Joe Tooney is a Pro Bowler. Trey Smith is a Pro Bowl caliber player, a total mauler at right guard. So those three are just incredible. But on the outside, you have Donovan Smith, a new left tackle, replacing Orlando Brown Jr., who went to Cincinnati. On the right side, you have Jawan Taylor.
Ball start, offense, number 74.
They benched Jawan Taylor for a couple snaps just to clear his head, sit down with a coach, get back in line because he'd already committed 4 penalties on the day. And then he comes back in and commits a 5th. That's 5 penalties on one player. I think Donovan Smith had another 2. The Chiefs had 12 for 94 total yards. These tackles are killing them with penalties right now, and they're the vets.
Defensively, the Chiefs are tied at third for the least points allowed and are led by defensive tackle Chris Jones, who ended his contract holdout in style.
You can expect him to show up, especially against a team like the Bears, in where there's very clear talent differential. And then next to him, you have second-year George Karlaftis, who had a sack and a half himself last game. He looks great. The Chiefs, other than that, they have some role players. They invested a first-round pick in a guy named Felix Onudike Uzoma out of K-State, but he's kind of a bit part at this point as he learns and adjusts. But really, it's Karlaftis, Jones, and then a decent rotation of guys who can get the job done.
At linebacker, the Chiefs are deep.
Nick Bolton is an incredible tackling machine who's probably going to make his first Pro Bowl this year. Leo Chenal is nicknamed Death Row. In his second year, he's just an incredible run stopper, situational pass rusher. Willie Gay Jr. And then the Chiefs signed Drew Tranquil away from the Chargers in free agency. It's really kind of an abundance of riches. They're learning how to use all four guys. Tranquil and Gay are excellent coverage linebackers. Tranquil in particular is sideline to sideline, but he also had 5 sacks last year. So that second level allows Steve Spagnuolo to disguise anything and everything in terms of blitzes, coverage, who's dropping, who's going. It's really kind of probably going to be a nightmare for Justin Fields.
Doesn't get easier for Fields when facing the Chiefs secondary.
I know this defense definitely felt like we could have done more and produced more. And coming to this year, this is something that we definitely have been looking at and want to continue to succeed with and show that, just because last week and the week before we held them to 14 points, like this is a defense that's going to continue to do that and be consistent with it.
And McDuffie's been as great as advertised. He's incredible and can really keep up with mostly anyone. But if you watch the Jags game on Sunday, L'Jarius Sneed took care of Calvin Ridley at a lot of key moments. There was that last goal line stand. Trevor Lawrence forced it to Ridley on 3 of 4 plays from the goal line. And L'Jarius Sneed got the best of him at every single one. 3 starting safeties who all could play for anyone. And they play a lot. The Chiefs play a lot of 3 safety sets. They're just so stacked in the back 2 levels on defense.
I didn't forget special teams, John. Matt tells me that the Kansas City Chiefs have had excellent special teams for several years under Dave Toub, the former Bears coach. But that last year, because of all the roster turnover, they started to commit a lot of mistakes on special teams. And in the first 2 games of this season, those mistakes have continued. So that could be an advantage for the Bears, although their place kicker, their field goal kicker, and punter are still 2 excellent special teams player. All right, we'll be back with B55 after this quick break. The fall is where we rock here at the Barroom Network with over 15 shows scheduled from September to January. Make sure you subscribe to the Barroom Network's YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, Bears fans, if you want to check out more information about the Kansas City Chiefs and anything we have to say about them, check out arrowheadaddict.com.
We're back with B55. This is where my juices get rolling because John Buffone is going to inject me with some adrenaline. I can't wait to hear his responses to the 5 questions I'm going to pose to him. And again, this segment is in dedication to Doug Buffone, John's uncle, who played 15 seasons for the Chicago Bears and wore number 55. John, you ready?
As ready as I'm going to be. Let's go.
Okay. Sunday was another aggravating afternoon for the Bears and Bears fans. The offense, at best, was very inconsistent, scoring just 17 points, with Justin Fields going 16 of 29 for 211 yards with a touchdown, 2 interceptions, and 1 rushing touchdown. Now, the offense has been under scrutiny for a long, long time, and now more and more fans are concerned about Justin's ability to become that franchise quarterback. What's your take on Fields and this offense? 55 seconds are on the clock. Go for it.
So there's a lot to go over here. I guess I'll start with Fields. This seems like a guy that is floundering in this offensive scheme. I'm not absolving him of his mistakes. Don't get me wrong. He's holding onto the ball too long. He's missing some throws. And I'm not a quarterback whisperer or even an evaluator, but it seems like he's not moving quickly enough through his progressions. And I could be wrong, but that's what my untrained eyes see. But unfortunately, I'm not sure any young quarterback would thrive in this system. And although he did walk back his comments today, coaching was brought up when he was asked about why he could be struggling. He says he feels robotic back there. The receivers are running the same routes on plays. The protection issues are only going to get worse, and the play calling is sometimes weird and lacks adaptation. Oh, the screen worked that one time? Let's just keep calling them, especially when we're on our own goal line. So you got a quarterback that needs extra developing, a coaching staff that apparently lacks the capability of developing a quarterback, bad protection, and a scheme that cannot sustain any kind of positive traction. That's what concerns me.
Let's bring Danny in here so he can comment on what he just heard.
I love it, John. I love your take right there, because I was fuming this past week when everything was dumped on Justin Fields, and again, just like you said, we're not absolving him of his mistakes and of not pulling the trigger on some open throws, but this is the scheme that's got to be built around him, and I think him coming out today showing his frustration. Hopefully other players have gone to Getsy and the offensive coaches and said, hey, listen, let's do something. This is not working. We are a team that has some talent. We should be able to put some points on the board. And hopefully with this week, it's going to be a tough, sledding here in KC. But hopefully after that, a couple of practices under the belts, we'll see a team that comes out with a dedication to the running a game, using Justin Fields' strengths with his legs, and also now getting guys like DJ Moore, hopefully Claypool and Darnell Mooney involved in the game as well.
Yeah, they picked a hell of a game to get pissed off about. Wish they would have did that with Tampa Bay rather than when they have to go to Arrowhead. But I think that I can't keep emotionally investing that something's going to be different. I have to actually see it. I want to believe that. I want to see that all of a sudden the offense is going to explode and Justin Fields will run for 160 yards and throw for 200 yards with 2 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. I want to see that. I just can't keep doing it. I just can't be like, this is what's going to happen this week. Maybe it's because maybe because I started going to therapy and I realized that I got to start seeing red flags in relationships. I'm seeing big red flags here, and so I gotta disconnect for a while until they prove to me that they have actually changed.
All right, let's talk about the running game. It was another pedestrian performance, right? Khalil Herbert rushed for 35 yards on 7 carries. Rashawn Johnson rushed for 32 yards on 4 carries. And Justin Fields had just 3 yards on 4 carries. We went into the season thinking the Bears running game would be a huge, huge strength. So far, they've been stuck on park. John, tell me, what are your thoughts about the Bears ground game? Let me put you on camera first.
Yeah, I only got 55 seconds to do this. So
That's right.
Well, I think at this point, I'm ready to see Rashawn Johnson. I know they like this committee thing like I was talking about, but if your running backs combined for a total of 11 carries, do you really need a committee? Maybe this is a transition phase to slowly ease Johnson into the starting role, but it's week 3 now. I think we see the juice when he runs the ball. And honestly, if you're doing a running back committee with so little carries, I don't know if you're really allowing anyone to get comfortable within the rhythm of the game. And while we're talking about the run game, let's talk about Justin Fields. If he's going to take this new free attitude towards playing quarterback, let's see the dude run a little bit more. He's one of the best athletes on the field at all times. So why are we putting the Ferrari in park? Sure, you want to see him get better as a passer, but I also think you want to score points. I also think you want to get first downs. I think we need to see more designed runs for Fields so he can get more comfortable and he feels like he can take over the game, and maybe the threat of him running all over the defense will open up some opportunities in the passing game.
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, the running game is something that's been, in my opinion, neglected these first 2 games by the offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. I mean, I understand that there's been some chances where they're behind the sticks and they're like it's 2nd and 12 or something like that. And you can't really, it's not ideal to run, but you need to determine or come up with a game plan that's got an equal balance. And you help a young quarterback in his development by leaning on that running attack. And that last year, they were one of the best running teams in football. I expect that to get, continue this year with, especially with that right side I keep talking about with Nate Davis and Darnell Wright, the rookie. I think those guys are people movers. You can get behind those guys. And I like the combination of Khalil Herbert. I like what so far we've seen from Roschon Johnson. You can actually play both those guys at the same time. With Johnson gives you so much, versatility. He can line up in the slot, be an extra receiver. So there's so much ways you can work with this, and with this running attack. And I think I just want to see Luke Getsy commit to it and stick to it and come up with that game plan that he's got, even number of run plays to pass plays.
Let me ask you this, Danny. What can you do? Do you have a struggling offensive line? What kind of scheme can you do? Because whatever they were doing with the run game wasn't necessarily working, but how can you adapt to what you have and try to mix things up, or maybe, throw the defense off or misdirect? What can you do to try to run the ball effectively? Because the Bears are a team that I think need to run the ball effectively to open some things up. So what can you do if your offensive line's struggling?
Well, this scheme is a predominantly a wide zone scheme, but we have seen some power concepts in here, whether it's a counter tray or a pulling guard, something like that, where you want to get some of your offensive linemen maybe moving, getting into the second level, and being, reaching that second level linebacker or even that third level defender, and, clearing some paths for your running backs. We saw a couple of nice runs by Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson last week. I think both went over 20 yards, and that was it basically. And so we'll go back, and I believe the Roschon Johnson run was from the I formation, with a fullback, lead fullback, and even a Chase Claypool crackdown block, I believe, at the end there, at the end of that line. So, these are things where you can do, where you can get these guys out to that second, third level and get some easy first downs. And now, once you have the defense thinking you're going to run, that opens up your play action. That opens up those deep shots down the middle of the field or down the football field. It opens up so much of your offense. And I think, again, with Justin Fields using his legs now, kind of moving his pocket and moving his launch point, you can just get real creative in terms of what you could do and how you can fool some of these defensive coordinators. Unfortunately, we talked about earlier, they're going to come across here Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, who is very, disguises a lot of his coverages, also his run blitzes. If he sees guys getting gashed up front, you're going to see linebackers, you're going to see safeties coming and filling those A gaps or C gaps. So you're going to have to get physical at the line of scrimmage with this Kansas City Chiefs football team to be able to run successfully. And I think at least with Davis back and with Darnell Wright, hopefully the Bears can, build some momentum there on that right side to kind of get some long runs there for either the running backs or even Justin Fields.
I got a quick question for Danny. I'm concerned, we want to see Justin Fields use his athletic skills, but it seems like defensive coordinators have looked at the film from last year, and now they're boxing him in and trying to keep him from getting outside to run. I mean, you're seeing somebody, whenever he rolls out, there's a defender there, and that wasn't the case all the time last year. This year, we're seeing it much more. And in fact, in some of the games towards the end of last season, we were seeing that. Do you think that this is going to be a problem to get Justin Fields going with the run game, given that the fact that defensive corners seem to have figured something out here?
Well, in terms of those are predominantly on passing plays where they're rushing and they're not kind of, not going up past him. They're kind of securing him in the pocket. And I think that's hard for him not to kind of escape outside that, outside the end or whatnot, and get out to the flats and get open. But what you could do in terms of designing the runs, there's quarterback power, there's quarterback sweep plays where you can bring a tight end in motion and you can have a running back or a fullback next to him, and those guys predominantly become his lead block. Now you can kind of, stretch them out wide, kind of separate them, and now you open up some seams there, some cracks. And we've seen, Justin Fields and his ability to kind of run away from defenders. Just give him a little lane there, and you'll see him, hit it up in the hole work hard. And next thing you know, he's running 5-10 yards down the football field. So there's different ways you can scheme it and open it up. But I think what you were talking about, Aldo, is on the pass rush. They were not allowing Fields to kind of escape that pocket. They were kind of keeping him hemmed inside there. But from what you see, if you go back and look at the tape, there are, sometimes there are openings in the A gap or the B gap where if Justin feels like there's nowhere to move on the outside, hit it up front in those gaps and just go straight down the middle of the field.
Very good. All right, let's get to question number 3 of B55. We know about the Alan Williams situation, and it basically started last week, John, with Matt Eberflus calling the plays against Tampa Bay. How would you evaluate Matt Eberflus as a defensive coordinator, as the guy calling plays, the guy scheming for opposing offenses? You've got
55 seconds.
Well, they did look more aggressive. I saw more blitzes and some people coming at the quarterback, but here lies the problem. They got 0 sacks. I think Ngakoue had 2 chances where he had Baker Mayfield dead to rights, and he got juked out like he was trying to bring down Michael Vick. Also, Mayfield threw for 200 yards in the first half on his way to throwing for 317 yards and a touchdown. Mike Evans had 171 yards receiving, and the tackling after the catch was pretty bad at times. If Baker Mayfield can have this kind of performance, what are Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes going to do to this soft defensive line and decimated secondary? I guess on the ever so small bright side, they did only allow 20 points. Remember, 7 of those Bucs points came from a pick 6. So if I'm Matt Eberflus, which I'm pretty happy that I'm not, I keep throwing the house at the quarterback. Yes, Patrick Mahomes is going to burn you that way, but I'd rather go out like that than watch him for 3.5 hours just pick apart a soft zone and completion. I'd rather just be aggressive and blitz and go out on my shield like that.
Yeah, I agree. And then this scheme is predicated on those front 4 guys getting pressure, generating turnovers, getting sacks, and the Bears are not doing either one. They're not getting pressure, they're not getting sacks, and they're not creating any sort of turnover. So that's a problem. And if you're Matt Eberflus, this is one of the things I had issues with Alan Williams last year was, you're getting gashed. Might as well just bring the house and see what happens. You can't get any worse, right? Mm-hmm. So the thing with Eberflus last week, we saw a couple more blitzes. The thing what we just heard about the Chiefs in terms of their offensive line, their weakness are those 2 tackles, right? Jawan Taylor, they paid a boatload of money for, and he's really horrible. And then the left tackle, Donovan Smith, who's a veteran, who's pretty much on his last legs. That's where you attack these guys, and trying to blitz them in the middle of that offensive line. Good luck there. So if I was him, I try and design some blitzes for my linebackers, maybe my slot corners or something like that. Get creative, bring some pressure, because your front 4 is not going to do it, unfortunately. So you got to get some pressure on Patrick Mahomes. And what we've seen so far in these first 2 games, watching the Chiefs play, Mahomes will give you a chance to make a play on a football. And when you have a chance to make a play on a football, you got to go ahead and get that, secure that interception. Jaquan Brisker, just like last week, where he dropped a possible pick 6 there right in his hand. So, and the other thing about the Chiefs is they're putting the ball on the ground. So, if you're going to go ahead and tackle, gang tackle, get to the ball carrier, because when that ball pops out, you got to jump on that ball and you got to be able to get that ball away from the Chiefs.
Don't you get my hopes up, Danny Shimon. Don't you do that. don't you put that burden on me.
John, your hopes should be up because the Lions beat the Chiefs. The Lions, the very same team that lost to the Seahawks last week. That's right, Don Burr. I'm saying this because of you. You're in the chat room, so I'm giving you a little bit of your medicine back. And I'm going to go on here and say the Packers lost, the Vikings lost. So why should we get our hopes up that maybe we're really in the division here, John? So that's my question for your 55 seconds here. Do you have any hope that we could potentially win this division?
Listen, Aldo, being 1 game out sounds great. Unfortunately, the Bears are going to have to, win a game. So let's look around the division. The Lions have beaten the Chiefs, and then they lost to Seattle, a pretty good team. They only lost by 6. The Packers, who looked decades ahead of the Bears in week 1, lost a 1-point game to the Falcons on the road. And then the Vikings are kind of having a reversal of fortune where they're losing some close 1-score games. However, Kirk Cousins has thrown for 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, and only 1 pick through 2 games. So all of those teams have something to hang their hats on. What exactly do the Bears have to hang their hats on? Lack of offense, lack of defense, possibly the worst coaching staff in the division. So while technically the Bears are still in the thick of things because it's only week 3, what has this team done to give anybody hope? You, me, Danny, anyone in the chat room, anyone watching the Bears. We had a little bit of hope before the season, but I would say it's pretty safe to assume all that hope's gone now.
Go ahead, Danny.
So you're saying there's a chance, John?
Yeah, me and my, everlasting positivity, because that's me, Mr. Positivity. I was very calm, cool, and collected last year. I allowed that 10-game losing streak to happen. I was like, oh, it's part of the process. Why am I trusting the Bears? Why would I ever do that? I let myself. I was ready to be hurt again, and I just said, go ahead, guys. Take it down. I'm going to be so happy because I know after this 10-game losing streak, something's different is going to happen in September of 2023. And here we are talking about the same things over and over again.
I pretty much agree with you in terms of, seeing them win this division is a little far-fetched right now at this moment.
A little far-fetched. How diplomatic.
But if they go out and a miracle happens and they beat KC in Kansas City, right? And the Chiefs are not unbeatable this year so far, right? And so if something happens, like I said, a miracle, that is something that can spark a team, that can give them some confidence. If the offense does look much better with this, the looser, more robotic Justin Fields, that could be something where, hey, there's hope there. And then next thing you know, all you got to do is a defense is just become more consistent. Like I said, get to the quarterback, generate some of those turnovers. Tyreek Stevenson is a guy that's really hurting them right now. The rookie, he's got a lot of talent, but he's really hurting them now. 3rd and 14 allows Mike Evans to get behind him and gives up that big touchdown. That really was a gut punch to the defense. So, if they clean up some of those mistakes, they start producing some of these turnovers, get the ball back to the offense in good scoring position, they could put together a couple of wins here and there. And like I said, once your confidence builds as a football team, you never know what's going to happen. But right now, the way that thing's going, they've had a rough week this week, a ton of distractions. Like I predicted earlier, this could be a Tressman type of game where the Bears, the Chiefs put up a 50-burger on the Bears. So, all this positivity is going to have to start in week 4. Probably not going to happen in week 3.
Yeah, it was a double-digit spread before today. I can only imagine what that's going to go to come game time. But Danny, my confidence will not build until I see a W. I haven't seen one in almost a year. I can't. I want to be with you. I just can't do it right now.
John, Cliff, my buddy Cliff says, if you want a positive, Cliff was at the Tampa Bay game. He lives down in Florida. He says Justin Fields threw a ball directly in his direction. It was the fastest, tightest spiral pass he had ever seen. So the physical skills are there. Take it from a man who saw Justin Fields up close and personal.
That is a positive I will take. I will. The fact that he threw a tight spiral, I will get. If that's what we have to take into week 3, then that's what we got to take into week 3.
All right, here's our final question. We'll turn off the clock for this one. It looks like the Bears fans are already on the ledge. How many times have we said this before? But maybe not as early as week 2, right?
Yeah,
so that's the question I'm asking you. Fans are already calling for the head coach to be fired, and offensive coordinator to be done away with. Some people are even calling for Ryan Post to be flogged at the City Square. What do you think about these conversations? Even if we're 0-3 at the end of Sunday's game, do you think that it's too early? The clock is off. It's all yours, brother.
Well, I'm not going to go back on what I said last week. I said the game against the Bucs was a must-win because they'll probably lose this week to the Chiefs, and that would be an 0-3 start. If they do, in fact, lose to the Chiefs, that means the Bears will have lost 13 straight games. I cannot stress this enough. We have not seen a Bears victory since October of last season, nearly a year. Matt Eberflus, if he loses this game, will have a coaching record of 3-17. We have seen coaches lose their jobs for far less. Throw in Wednesday's drama, and you have a train that is completely off the tracks. Listen, we all want consistency. We all want stability. We don't want a coaching carousel and a quarterback change every 3 to 4 years. But if you're a Bears fan, you don't have to be patient anymore. We were patient last year through the rebuild. We were supposed to see something different this year. Something was supposed to be better. But what are they better at so far? You are a defensive-minded head coach in his second year with better players, and the defense still stinks. You have a second-year offensive play caller with better players, and the offense still stinks. We have seen this movie before in Chicago. No one expected this to be a Super Bowl contender, but there are problems across the board. Offense, defense, attitude problems. You had to have a sit-down conversation with a player you traded for about his effort. So anyone that tells you that you need to relax because it's only week 3, don't listen. Because it feels like 2022 never ended. It's not week 3. It could potentially be week 13. If you come to Chicago looking to set records, well, guess what? You did it. You own the longest losing streak in franchise history. And if something doesn't change soon, you're going to be just adding to that record and cement your legacy for all the wrong reasons. And that's all I have to say about that.
Wow. Danny, can you top that?
Not much. I agree with 100% what John just said. Not much I can add to it. I mean, I wasn't really a fan of the Eberflus hire We talked about earlier in terms of player development. Those young guys played a lot last year. We haven't seen any one of them take a step up and become more consistent players so far this year. So there's no player development, and if this streak continues, and then in the Denver game is no guarantee either here at Soldier Field in Week 4. So if this continues, I mean it's become national. The national media's picked up on it now, and now the Bears are going to become the laughing stock of the National Football League. Not that they're going to fire the coach in instance. Like I said earlier, if Trestman got a whole season during that debacle, Eberflus, I don't care how bad it's going to get. I think he's going to get an entire season, and then after that is when we can talk about possible changes. But again, if this team now starts believing, gets a victory, and now these young players start developing, get better, that's where he can then save himself and save his job.
How many wins do you think would save his job? And because I don't know what the leash is on here, because I know they don't want to keep having to rehire coaches and go through all this process and bring in Bill Polian to help you pick a coach or whatever they're going to do to have I'm sure Ryan Poles would probably have more say over that in the next coaching hire, but I'm sure they want consistency. The Bears are striving to be the Steelers. Have one head coach and have him there for 18 years. Have one quarterback there, have him for 15 years, 16 years, 17, 18 years. I know that's what they want. So what would be the threshold to either be fired or stay on for the next year? If they go 3-14 again, I think he's out. I think if they go 4-13 or even 5-12, I think is going to get you run out of town, because that's 2 games after spending that much in free agency and supposedly having a second year in the system with the same quarterback. What do you think the threshold is?
Yeah, and I don't think there's a number out there right now, but I think if they go 3-14 again or 2-15, I think that's something that they're gonna have to go ahead and, just because of the losing culture now that the team has, just for their morale in that locker room, you're gonna have to make a coaching change, in my opinion. But if they get 6 wins or 7 wins and the team's getting better towards the middle half and end of the season, they're more competitive. We're seeing young players develop, young players come on. I think that's gonna show that, hey, look, there's player development here. It's our second year in this system with its coaching staff. We're getting better. We got more wins than we got last year. So I think that's where they would kind of sell that positivity. But again, it all depends on how this team, performs the rest of the season. And whether they go and either just tank and just, kind of give up on the coaching staff and not even listen to them anymore, or if they can, go ahead and continue to get better week in and week out. And then, at least become competitive and be in games. Like even last year when they depleted the whole roster, they were at least competitive. And that's because of the offense at one point at 5 or 6 games, Justin Fields and them, they were scoring about 30 points a game. They're in games and they lost, was it 7 1-possession games last year? So, last year they were competitive. If they take a step back and they're not competitive and they're not, young players aren't getting better, that's where I think they go ahead and pull the plug. And the other thing is Kevin Warren is in town now. And I know he's the president and he's out of the football operations, but he's trying to build a stadium for this team, and going, 3-14, or even worse, back-to-back years is not a way for him to go ahead and sell this, to the different cities or whatever, to try and build up a stadium for him. So I think he'll be involved there as well.
And John, what was it that you used to say about the Bears, that they run their organization like a diner?
Yep. Yeah. The Bears are run like a family diner. You hire your cousin Benny to be the cook. He can't even make cereal right, but he's a nice guy, so you're gonna let him stick around. Like, you like him. Like, he's a good guy. He really adds to the culture. He burned cereal somehow, but he needs to stick around because we just like him. He just adds to that fun family Bears culture. Not a winning culture, but it's a good culture. I remember the Bears had one of the best cultures in the NFL at one point. It wasn't winning culture, but it was a really good culture, which is what you have.
So hopefully Kevin Warren is going to change that and make it more of a professional organization. But I still got the feeling that what's going to determine the near future of the coaching staff is the messages that George McCaskey gets on his email from season ticket holders, from people who spend a lot of money with the organization, and from former players, because the story is that there are a group of former players that George really takes to heart what what they say about the organization, how upset they get when the team is losing and so forth. So it's not so much the number of games. It really depends on what George McCaskey is going to hear on the telephone or hear from friends in face-to-face meetings or read in emails. That's what's going to depend, unless Kevin Warren steps in there and said, no, you gave me this job and I'm making my analysis and I will. And we still have to see what kind of a leader he is in that respect. I hope that he's as tough as nails, because I think that's what this organization needs. They need a tough, strong leader to change the culture and not be, the Fred's Diner or George's Diner guy.
Yeah. So I hope you're right. I really do. But like I said, I can't keep emotionally investing and just pouring out from my cup unless the Bears are going to pour something back into it. So I always say this team will never love me as much as I love it. And it's just something that I gotta kind of disconnect for a little while until they can show that they're for real. And I'll believe things when I see it. But as we're wrapping things up here, let's get some parting shots in here. Denny, what are you working on? Bears fans are asking for mock drafts. They're talking Caleb Williams. They're talking Drake May. They're talking Shedeur Sanders. How far along are we in the process?
Yeah, college football season is already up and going. So I've already started scouting some prospects. I've been looking more at the defensive and offensive line right now, to try and kind of get a look at some of these prospects that are going to be available for next year's draft. Obviously, the one positive, if you will, of being 0-2 and having this 12 game, possibly potentially 13 game losing streak, is you are picking high in the draft, and the Carolina Panthers are also 0-2 and struggling as well. So you could potentially look at 2 top 10 picks that could be organizational kind of foundation players there at the top of this draft class, which early on is developing into a nice, deep, talented draft class.
All right, Aldo, I'm sure we have 15,000 shows going on the Ballroom Network this week. What do we got going on?
We do, but here's the message that I want to leave with people, because we've been getting a lot of new visitors to our shows. I think it's because I subscribe to the check mark thing, and so Elon Musk sends out my tweets, and so we've been getting people whose names I'm not familiar with, so I'm gathering that they're new followers. I hope that they like Buffone 55 and Gabriel Talks Football and our After the Game show, Bear Football, all of the different shows. We've got almost a dozen shows dedicated to the Chicago Bears and some dedicated to hockey and baseball and so forth. So I hope that you like it. And if you do, please subscribe to the Barroom Network here on our YouTube channel. And if you listen to audio podcasts, all you got to do is go to your server, whoever delivers your audio podcast, to your device, and subscribe to the Barroom Network. You're going to get a show every day, sometimes 2 or 3 shows a day. And hit that little bell, because if you're watching on YouTube, because if you hit the bell, you'll get an alert that we're live with a fresh show. And really love the interaction, and old timers like Cliff Victoria and Ravi and so forth really enjoy always interacting. Laz, and I hate to mention names because I leave somebody out and I feel like an idiot, but or I mispronounce the name. So, but nonetheless, thank you to all the new listeners, and of course, everyone that returns every week. Really, really thanks a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. And don't forget to join Danny, myself, and our new analyst, Coach T, on Bear Football, our After the Game show. The 3 of us will share our immediate reactions, carry Coach Eberflus and Justin Fields' press conferences, and break down all the key plays of the game. That'll do it for us tonight on Buffone 55. I want to thank everyone in the chat room. I just want to say I appreciate everyone who listens to this show, watches this show, whether it's on the video version, the audio version, the live version, the podcast version, whether this is your first time or your 55th time. I appreciate each and every one of you and what you guys bring to the show, because we feed off your energy, we feed off your questions, and you're kind of what keeps this whole thing going. So we do appreciate it. But like I said, that will do it for this week. For Aldo Gandia and Danny Shimon, I'm John Buffone. Enjoy the game, everybody.
Peace out.